road. To the north of the road is the city of Sunnyvale, to the south is Cupertino. Many of you are familiar, I'm sure, with the topography. My friends told me, you know, sir, that the property values in Cupertino, that is to the south of the road, are about 60 to 70% higher than to the north of the road, Sunnyvale. But to my naked eye, it appeared that everything was identical. There was nothing distinct. So I was puzzled. I said, why? Is there any particular reason? Is there a large black population, for instance, in Sunnyvale because of the once you have, then there's a ghettoization, therefore more crime, therefore less property values. They said, no, nothing like that. Identical social profile also. So how come? What's the difference? They said the only reason is in Cupertino, the school district performs very well. The outcomes are very good in public schools. Under American law, unless you are a resident of that locality and pay the taxes locally, you cannot send your children to public schools free of cost. And therefore there is a tremendous demand for in-migration. It outstrips supply, therefore prices shot up. See the beautiful fusion of the stakes, economic consequences, educational consequences of the family, the aspirations fulfilled, how the society is organized, all because the school board, which is locally managed, is making a remarkable difference there. That is what I mean by decentralization. Like the RTE has been a colossal failure because it's badly designed. We are now coming up with specific amendments as well as institutional designs to separate education. Healthcare. The less said the better. Another great disaster in the country. But again, people like Rajnikant Arori, they have showed how it's possible to dramatically improve the quality of health outcomes at a very low cost and reach the standards comparable to the best in the world by decentralized, efficient management. It doesn't mean that there's no role for centralization. For instance, if you want to have a proper health management system, the IT-driven data management system, it has to be centralized by nature. But the actual delivery and the accountability systems have to be localized. There has to be a beautiful fusion of both things. Again, my team is now developing a very detailed blueprint for a radical transformation of health sector in the country. If somebody is going to listen, how to do it in a sequential manner, and what is the roadmap, given Indian conditions, not imagining something outrageous, but we have a certain situation, some strengths and weaknesses. How do we therefore go from position A to position B without spectacular infusion of resources, with a moderate infusion of resources, realistic infusion of resources, but radical alternation of the institutions to be managed, particularly with decentralization. A last item. A lot of talk about Swachh Bharat. 18 years ago when I founded Lok Sabha movement, 19 years ago, for about 10 years there was not a single public address of mine which did not talk about toilets and public defecation and so on and so forth. So later on I sort of toned it down because I didn't want to be known as a toilet man in this country. Because we sort of brand somebody and then dismiss everything that they say, however useful and useless it may be. But I'm delighted that it's taken up at long last, which should have happened 60, 70, 100 years ago. But when I look at the details, I really don't see an architecture and a set of goals that really are comprehensive enough for the country and the architecture of the institutions to deliver. I'll give you an example again. Alandur in Tamil Nadu, near Chennai city, that is where Minambakam Airport actually is located. It was a municipality some years ago, It was a municipality some years ago, about 130,000 population. A man called R.S. Bharti, he was elected as a municipal chairman. I have not met him, he is not my brother-in-law, I have not met him. This is what I know and I heard, and Chakraparty confirmed that to me, and other friends confirmed that to me. I would like to meet with him. But see what's happened. Once he became municipal chairman, he realized the importance of sewerage in a small municipality. In a country where million cities don't have sewerage system, the so-called mega cities have only 30, 40, 50% coverage, cities like Hyderabad, etc. He had the audacity to dream that sewerage system in the small municipality is important because there was partly public defecation, but where there were toilets, there was no proper digestion, therefore untreated sewage is simply going into open drains. And as there is public pressure, the municipality will send some tankers, and I believe with low technology, they try to pump this sewage, raw sewage into these tankers with all leakages, then take it a little outskirts of the town and then dump it in low-lying area. A typical you can imagine the consequences. This man understood that this is something that is doable, that's necessary to do. He mobilized the community, raised 8 crore rupees from the people towards future sewerage connections. Because he was the first mover, many institutions came forward to lend him money. There was hardly any subsidy by the way, only 1 crore out of 34 crores. About 3% was the subsidy. The rest was loans, very soft loans, some of them. Then executed a 150 kilometer sewerage system at 34 crores within 3 years. To remarkable effect. And the consequence again is quite unexpected, apart from the sanitation and hygiene. The property values which are rolling initially at about 1,000 rupees a square yard, and Telugu people understand property values very well. Everything about Telugu people is real estate and land. Feudal culture is predominant in our psyche. They shot up within 2 years to 10,000 and 15,000 rupees per square yard. People understood it's not merely a question of hygiene and convenience, it's not merely a question of better governance and dignity, it's also value of property. My economic status has improved dramatically, my creditworthiness has improved dramatically. When we say decentralization, it is designing institutions in this manner. It's not this or that. You require union government, you require the state, you require the local government, all. But in a beautiful fusion, so that localization, decentralization, delegation, devolution, autonomy, accountability, flexibility, they all come together beautifully. Every single major change in the country of significance that we actually can see a quantum leap relative to the rest of the country happened because somebody has found a mechanism to isolate it from the rest of the country, decentralize it either horizontally or vertically, build systems to make sure that the accountability is fused into that, therefore outcomes are inevitable, created the stakeholding pattern for the people, and therefore the people took care of the outcomes. My own experience in the district 29 years ago, 30 years ago. In a state where out of 22 districts in 20 years we did 110,000 acres of lift irrigation. I was privileged to see 200,000 acres of lift irrigation in just 2.5 years in just one district. And the cost in the state at that time on average was 15,000 rupees per acre, my cost was 2,000 rupees. When all this 15,000 was borne by the government, in my case 1,000 rupees only by the government, the balance the people borrowed from the banks and they were all repaid within 3 years. Not a single default or loan debt. From Koreans to Arawalis to anything, you see, to ISROs, horizontal or vertical, it is the mantra, but in a responsible way with institution building. It's possible. One last word. Now that the Government of India has done away with the Planning Commission allocating resources, I don't know if you're aware, in the last budget 2014-15, the government has shown 7,78,000 crores central transfer resources to states, all put together. So it's no longer in separate silos and baskets. This year, let's assume the same amount continues, 800,000 crores. Now, after the Finance Commission report, the 14th Commission report are very ready, they're talking about 32% tax share of the union going to states is going up to 42% at the very least. So we're going to have 800,000 crores. All we require in terms of resources is not anything new, not anything at the cost of anything else. Just 1/6 of the money, if you transfer directly to the local governments at the lowest possible level, we will see that there will be a dramatic transformation. That will mean about 100 to 1,000 rupees per capita. A very neat number people can understand and relate to. If half of it is utilized for Swachh Bharat in a responsible way, it includes not only toilets and sewerage and urban waste management, it includes water bodies, and it includes agricultural waste. All these five together, my back-of-the-envelope calculations indicate they will cost about, in all of India, about 450,000 crores in the next 5 years, of which the Government of India probably needs to support to about 250,000 to 300,000 crores. With this kind of money, it's available already. It's just that how you utilize, where you utilize, rather than adding extra money, because extra money is not possible. If that money is transferred to local governments, with the stipulation that 50% for the next 5 years will go for Swachh Bharat, and we design accountability instruments, we will see a revolution in this country. We have to shut our arrogance. We have to really be willing to learn from the experiences in this country and the rest of the world. We have to learn to institutionalize. And the problem that Mr. Upendra talked about, execution, implementation, that exists because we are busy talking about grand goals without building institutions to actually deliver and to be accountable. Decentralization means delivering with accountability. That means the design is important. We can make it happen. And if we don't make it happen in the next few years, we are in serious trouble as a country. I'm a great optimist. China is now ceding space, partly because of the demographic problems, they're losing labor force. Working age people, they're losing 4 million a year. Partly because of the prosperity, therefore wages are increasing. And probably 30 to 40% of Chinese manufacturing can be transferred to India if we're willing to grab it quickly. If we don't, other nations will grab, small nations, each them take a small size. And there's no way we can have such a massive opportunity again in the next century. It is now or never. There is a priceless opportunity, but a narrow window of opportunity. But one thing that saddens me is that the rest of India is showing some sense of urgency and rationalism. In the two Telugu-speaking states, intense populism, short-termism, the lust for power at the cost of the future of the people. It is hurting us very badly. We have to make these two states realize. Stop talking too much. Stop setting irrational goals of the tallest tower and the biggest city and the Singapore and all kinds of rubbish. Do practical things, sensible things. Re-institutionalize. And de-institutionalize these dysfunctional centralized mechanisms. Build accountability to it. Make people stakeholders. We can make a huge difference because people are ready and waiting. They will participate. Thank you.